Hey guys, it's your host Josh today here, and welcome to No Tux Allowed. Today I am wearing my beautiful white T-shirt that I've always worn, and today we also have a Bigpod wearing, I think your
Hey,
shirt's green,
yeah.
and we have a guest. That is Tom Lawrence, who has shown today that I first thought was just a great plain gray T-shirt, but it says Raid on it, but I have no further context behind it.
Says Raid is not a backup.
Oh, that is true. All right.
Well, for those that know, yes. For those that are about to know, it will be true to them. They'll understand this.
I am certain that there might be some talk about that today. So, we have Tom Lawrence today. Now, obviously, people probably know who you are, but just in case, can you explain like what it is that you're basically like internet famous for?
Oh, I make videos that explain technology, give some tutorials, teach people how to use things based on my practical experience of being. I don't know that I want to say just network engineering, because obviously it's a lot more than that. Storage engineering, virtualization, all the different things that I do. I talk about on my channel, give people tutorials, and been doing it for a minute. So 30 years of my career of doing tech, and then the last 8 has been. I did public speaking that before then, but 8 has been pushed onto YouTube. So I'm always just cranking out videos of whatever it is I got going on and teaching people how to do it.
Oh, okay. Because I remember my first forays into PF Sense, and you were like the only one that had like videos on PF Sense that were any good and actually were written in English.
Yeah, before, and it's kind of those things. Someone's wrong on the internet. I must fix that. You would look up something, and PF Sense be an example where and everyone's going to remember this, and they're probably still watching at least a couple of these videos where there's not been someone to fill this category, where you have someone typing in Notepad, bringing it up on the screen, saying, now I'm going to do this step. They minimize the Notepad, then they go show you how to do something. And I mean, that's good enough for if you don't speak good English, for example, and you want to be able to express how you're going to do something. But of course, some of those tutorials weren't even accurate, and that only made it worse to me, because I'm like, how does this have thousands of views? This is actually telling you the wrong way to do this. So you go, someone's wrong on the internet, so I got to go put it right. And I've been doing firewall talks for a long time, so that's one of the reasons that was the first videos I put on there. And they weren't even because I wanted them on YouTube. They were because someone couldn't attend my talk at a conference and said, hey Tom, can you put that on YouTube? I was like, I'm a technical person, I'm sure I could figure out how that works. And I realized more people viewed that video than were at the conference, and I'm like, that's interesting. There must be a demand for this stuff.
Well, it turns out that like I think like during that time, like 8 years ago with YouTube, it was really a wonderful platform for like educational content in general. Like I can remember like a bunch of channels just starting back then that nowadays are actually pretty big name deals.
Yeah. Yeah,
Now,
in the beginning it was a lot different. Obviously the last 4 years have been a rapid change with all the AI slop, but there's still a lot of decent videos out there. You just kind of follow the it's strange because you end up following people. This is always a discussion I have, is everyone's like, well, will we all be replaced with AI? And I'm like, no, the AI stuff is terrible so far. So you end up finding like the YouTuber that puts out content that's real, that's tangible, that's like, okay, this is accurate, and you kind of pick and choose them. It does make it a little bit harder for discovery, because if you just start out, you're lost in the noise of 10 million videos that are AI slop things.
So, well, since you mentioned AI, let's go a bit of a different route about AI. What do you think the future looks like for IT contractors, especially more smaller ones, now that we are in the age of AI?
The challenge is, and I'm actually be on a talk pretty soon for a big company about this, because I'm not exactly what they call an AI skeptic, but I'm certainly not an AI enthusiast. I certainly see its usefulness in being able to find things, but it really is just another tool in the toolbox, because I'm old enough to remember when Google came out. And if you dig around, you can find these articles, and they're great because the context is funny, that Google would end the job of IT support because you could just Google it and you'd be able to find answers. And I think all of us are still busy doing IT support, and Google's been around for a minute. Google's, 21, 22 years old now. So it did not end all of our support. So it's another enhanced tool. One of the big challenges, and especially with AI, is while it does give us some useful answers to things, it also gives us some inaccurate answers that the trained technical eye goes, no, that's not how I would do that or how it should be done. And so it doesn't necessarily live up to the claim that AI does, is like, hey, I could take any Joe average person off the street and they're instantly a technician because I gave them 5 minutes of AI training. No, they're going to put a command and it doesn't work. But it is a nice enhancement tool because I don't know how to do everything. But with AI, I can go, oh, let me grab this. And I think I remember the command for this. And I can look at it and go, yeah, that's what I wanted. And this is what I want that script to do. Or this is helpful. I was actually solving some stupid problem I had in Ubuntu with the kernel problem. Could I have Googled my way through it? Probably. It was actually faster just to drop the error message. AI said, this is exactly what's wrong. And I'm like, perfect. You nailed it. I would have found this with Google, but you just shortcutted it for me. And I validated the answer going, yes, that's where the problem is.
Well, for a long time with AI, I had a big problem because I grew up in the age of using Google as a IT technician programmer. So I'm used to typing keywords, used to typing like short things to get what I need. Well, with AI, you need to tell him exactly in a nice humanly structured way, not exactly something I'm used to.
I'm hearing
It is
some
different.
echo.
And go back to the example of the problem I was solving. For some reason, and this is an odd problem, I press the power button on my Ubuntu laptop and it says nothing. Well, it wants to power down. I'm like, no, it's supposed to suspend. That's odd. So then I go up, click in the corner, go to suspend. It doesn't suspend. It doesn't even say anything. It just does nothing. I'm like, okay, it's not listening to me. And I'm like, how do I suspend from the command line? I've not done this in so long. Then I'm like, oh my gosh, system control suspend. Now I have a problem. And it would then break down. I just dropped that into the AI system, and it started going through what I could look up for what was causing it not to suspend. Turns out there was something stuck in GNOME on the back end, but it found it really quick. AI gave me a command to type. It found this thing in GNOME that was inhibit. Because I had run some updates from the command line, it had caused a hang in the updater, but the updater wasn't showing because it crashed or something. I don't know. Either way, it was in the background and wouldn't let it suspend because it thought it was running updates, but I ran up from the command line. So I created my own problem, but AI quickly pointed me to it without too much Google searching, because that is a weird issue. You know, I can't name in a long time when my laptop just decided not to suspend. I mean, if it does, it usually tells you why, but yeah, you hit it and it's just no error message to go off of. You're like, So that's where AI is useful, but it didn't give me any weird commands that, like, well, I think later it started suggesting you can completely disable, suspend, and I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do any of that. That's just, no, I just want this problem fixed. So once again, trained technician, I'm familiar with Linux, so it's a helpful narrowing down tool without me having to do too much. So that substance, I think it's good. It is. Understanding prompting, like you said, is different than just doing keyword searches. There's some similarities, but obviously some differences. So it is another tool that we have to learn how to use.
Right. So to further expand on that, now Lawrence Systems, not the YouTube channel, but like the company.
Yeah.
I know that they were acquired at some point, but I know that they were like the IT contracting business that you operated.
Yeah.
And but what specifically do they actually do? Because that's going to lead into the question afterwards.
Sure. So Lawrence Systems is what I started in 2003. And I split apart Lawrence Systems, the YouTube channel, versus Lawrence Systems, the IT services and managed service provider. So I sold all my clients to CNWR, and then I bought part of CNWR with that trade. It's kind of like an equity trade deal.
Okay.
Hey, you can have this part of the company.
I'm quite intimately familiar with that.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so I own a smaller part of CNWR. I don't run it. That was my goal, was not to run the day-to-day anymore, but to be involved in design, consulting, and working on things, but not dealing with things like, I don't know, employee benefits and all the silliness that comes with running a business. I'd run it for long enough, and I said, I don't feel like having a bunch of employees. So all the employees went over to CNWR as well. I only have and one hire I made to help with the media side of Lawrence Systems I hired last year. For a while, I had no one, and I was pretty happy. I have one person, and I'm happy still because I only have one person to babysit. So, and that person doesn't require a lot of babysitting. That's why I'm happy.
I personally joke constantly about how we need to get a producer for the show. That way I don't have to find all the articles to talk about.
Yeah, find all the stuff. It's a lot. As far as the services, it's consulting services related to virtualization, storage, network engineering. Those are the primary consulting side, which we'll do for all kinds of companies. Then specifically, the MSP side is a little bit more narrow and focused. It's managed service provider, as in we're to outsource IT. I think we got around 60 or 70 businesses that we're the outside IT for. We do fully managed IT for companies that are minimum around 20 seats, and goes up from there. Some of them have 200 or 300 seats. So it's a big variety of companies, and no one vertical. It's like everything from, I think we got a dairy farm, we got a mining company, we got a bunch of dental. I think not too many dental offices, but they're just random. Lots of randomness to our clients. A lot of manufacturing nature of being in the Detroit area is manufacturing.
Yeah, we've got some of that out here too. Thankfully, all of our IT contractors happen to be like FreeBSD users, and one of them is even a developer that is also happens to be like the network administrator for our local ISP, because it's still a mom and pop shop. So I've learned quite a bit because they discovered that, hey, I'm a Linux guy. I at one point ran like Gentoo on 23 different Raspberry Pis, and yes, it was as cancerous as you think it is. So, I've ran into and met a lot of these people, but now obviously I didn't go down the route of being like an IT, working in IT, because I just went into manufacturing and learned way too much about plastics, because that's what's popular out here. But in general, say if I'm like a 20-something-year-old, I've never really considered it, but suddenly I just get like that drive. It's just like, hey, I've been home labbing for like a hot minute. Like I discovered like TrueNAS scale. I installed it on a computer. I spun up a couple containers on it because I don't know if it calls them Docker containers or if it just calls it containers. I don't use TrueNAS scale, so I don't know. I've only ever used like the web interface for managing my ZFS pools. What else does that person need to learn to be able to even consider even applying for a position at a company like Lawrence Systems? I imagine that there's probably quite a bit, but where would they want to start?
Yeah, it kind of depends. I mean, it's fun, and I like TrueNAS scale because it gives you a lot of things. But there's, for example, if you know what Docker containers are, great. But TrueNAS scale adds an abstraction layer. It just calls them apps, so you don't get to know some of the nuts and bolts. It requires some basic understanding. Now, just from a perspective of someone who hires people, knowing that they're using TrueNAS scale gives me some insight into whether or not they've spent more time with technology, they have more passion about it than just a job, because nobody really sets it up at home because they're bored. They usually set it up because they have a need and a problem to solve, and you start learning, okay, I want to do X, Y, and Z. TrueNAS is the tool of choice here to load Jellyfin and get some media loaded. Then you run into the network engineering side of it, and the networking side is really important. That is one thing a lot of people miss, because they'll start with playing with the applications or start with that, or even people who are only been in the cloud. I've actually a lot of friends on the younger side that seem to have like skipped over some of the networking because they never needed to do it, because they just I just started building stuff in the cloud. And developers, a lot of developers that don't have a strong concept of networking, because they're like, I just started building apps, I have some Amazon or Azure credits, etc. So that networking part is still important, because somehow we have to make sure we understand how these small businesses are connecting, how they're getting out to the internet, because that in that layer is where you'll find a lot of problems. So I would say it's a really important aspect, is to probably know that. You don't even have to know TrueNAS to do it, but you definitely should have some concepts in networking, concepts in just more Windows, because most of the support we do, not on the consultative side, but on the managed services side, is going to be Windows. Got to know your way around it, know how to deal with the issues, kind of deal with the problems that come in, and be able to troubleshoot and read between the lines of what the user asked and what needs to be done. It no work sometimes is all as you can get from the user. It's
only a matter of time before you have to deal with the Windows permission issue in Active Directory, and then you have to then you have to go to the Active Directory server, which happens to be running this old version of Windows from 2002, well, 2008 or something like that, and you can't find any documentation on like current things. You have to remember how to find a historical record of what used to be and manage that sometimes, which that is a thing that we encountered out here with a bank recently. The bank had an old AT&T Unix server, fresh out of 1983. They were running this server right up until 2017. It was their primary account server. This thing handled all the transactions, and it did a solid job for 50 years until the AT hard drive started failing.
Yeah. There's a lot of legacy equipment out there like that. The good news is, like for us, we won't do support contracts unless everything's up to date. Like when we onboard a client, the first thing is called the remediations phase. As in, until we remediate this, we can't onboard it, which means, sorry, that old legacy thing that is out of support has to be replaced. And once it's replaced, we can manage it, but until it's replaced, we cannot.
Well, one thing you're pretty well known for is your, shall we say, evangelizing of xcp-ng.
Yes.
Unlike most people who will talk about Proxmox, you mostly talk about xcp-ng. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so
and
xcp-ng.
Why?
Oh, and the why. The why is important. We'll start with the why.
Oh, okay.
There's a really good article written by, and you can first say yes, there's some bias because of who the author is. The CEO of Vates. Vates is the company that is the business around xcp-ng. Something I like to remind people, open source is a development model. You still have to put a business model around it to support it. So Vates sells support contracts for xcp-ng. But the article is titled, Who Owns Your Stack? Or Who Owns Your Virtualization Stack would be the full title. And one of the things in xcp-ng is a lot different. It's very appliance-like, which in a way is very similar to VMware, so it makes it a comfortable switch for moving from VMware, which obviously is very popular right now because of all the licensing changes, over to the xcp-ng and Xen ecosystem. Now, Xen's been around just as long as VMware and longer than KVM, which is the underlying hypervisor for Proxmox. Xen's been around and was forever in the hands of Citrix, and Citrix made some poor decisions and led to xcp-ng. xcp-ng said this should be fully open source because that was the original way things should be done. Citrix played those games where here's some source code, but nope, we compile in all kinds of restrictions and things like that. So kind of they never really did it proper open source. Now XCP is completely open source. But the xcp-ng from the repositories on down is 100% one stack. You're not dealing with the way Proxmox and OpenStack and lots of the other ones are really orchestration tools using KVM underneath. They're orchestrating it, but they're based on Debian, for example. They have the Debian repositories in Proxmox, which is really, from a tinkering standpoint, is amazing. I can do amazing stuff with Proxmox because I can apt-get install whatever I want and start building on it. The problem is you now need the Proxmox team to always be in lock sync step with the Debian team. And when there's major version release changes,
like recently,
you learn what explodes and what doesn't hold up, because once again, it's not this lockstep. Versus we've got systems that we've had Xen on now, just because of the way they built it. When you went from Citrix to xcp-ng, you installed xcp-ng over the top of Citrix. All your VMs, all your settings, everything stayed. So you can go from your 2016 version of Citrix server, run over the top and have the xcp-ng, because it was released in late 2017. And then every version after that, you could just keep updating in place, and they just went smooth, even not just through minor releases, but major release updates. It has a very different architecture because of the way they did the underlying, and because they're always doing it, and there's no tinkering, because any repo, could you go in there and re-enable repos? Yes. I wouldn't recommend it, but the only repo enabled is theirs by default, unless you go in there and start monkeying with stuff. So you get this really one single source for all the data, which means everything just integrates really well and really smooth. I also like the fact that all the backups and everything is completely built in natively. It's not a separate component. It is the component. And one of the reasons that matters is they allow for really good block transfer, really good change block transfer management. So when you're doing backups, they're very fast. Your deltas are fast. And they got a ton of tooling around it that's very well developed because it's been around for so many years that it scales really well. It's got easy to manage. Like we have some clients that have like 2,000 VMs running across their xcp-ng host, and it's more popular than you think in the hosting world. That's actually where it was for a long time, almost more popular in VMware for web hosting and ISP companies. Prior to like the hyperscalers getting involved, like your Amazon, Azure, and Google, all these smaller MSPs, they had massive farms of Zen servers. That was just how they built most of their platforms on.
Yeah, because I remember hearing about xcp-ng and Citrix way before like I heard anything about VMware. And then I remember when KVM was finally integrated into the Linux kernel, and everybody was excited to actually have a hypervisor that's native to the kernel that came from the kernel itself, which. Honestly, I've been a KVM user.
So does Zen. Zen's in the kernel as well.
Yeah, Zen is in the kernel too.
That.
But
but
Zen
it's important to know that Zen, when used properly, uses a lot less of a Linux kernel than something like KVM. You have a really minimum platform.
Yeah.
And even the UI you get on your if you plug in, let's say, an xcp-ng, you plug in a monitor. That's actually a VM running on top of Zen xcp-ng, or even old Zen server, or any other Zen-based product.
Yeah. Dom Zero is an interesting concept.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons what is that? Cubes OS. I like Cubes OS is very popular, and one of the reasons they use Zen for the way they partition everything to create the different memory spaces is because with cubes you want things really, really secure. It's one of the features of Zen is extremely strong boundaries, and it adds a challenge. Like it's not hard to get started programming with Zen. It's got a well documented architecture and API, but it has some challenges when you write stuff with it because the boundaries have to be respected. It's built into its architecture to keep these very strict security boundaries. It's actually one of the reasons it's used in a lot of automotive and other secure applications have Zen as the underpinning. If you go like to the Zen.org, the
Zenproject.org, I believe.
Yeah.
And like one of the most simplest explanation I can say is with Zen everything is a VM.
Yeah.
That's the most simplest explanation you can think of. Everything is a VM.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I've been a very happy KVM user these past 10 years because that's just what I've always used because, heaven forbid, Virt Manager is just like the first virtual machine program that I learned how to use, and then I discovered, oh yeah, I can connect this to remote servers. That's just how I've always used it. Now, obviously, I'm an old school Linux guy, right? Like I'm not using Proxmox or anything. Instead, I just run Debian on my server, and I use Debian to run as like my virtual host. And yes, there is a lot more going on with that kind of stack because heaven forbid, just like Tom said, I have the Debian application repositories with all of the Debian team's glorious work. Not that they do a particularly bad job, but sometimes they could be better.
Yeah.
And then with Proxmox recently, like I as soon as Debian just came out with a new version of stable, Debian 13. Proxmox, to my understanding, they still haven't updated like their tool suite to Debian 13. Sometimes that can take them like a month or two. And I've already seen like reports on r/homelab where somebody tried updating their Proxmox server to the latest Debian stable release the very first thing I'm wondering is, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Just let Proxmox tell you when the update's available, please.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that xcp-ng has that like you may not see with something like Proxmox is you have to actually have separately installed dashboard for it. Yes, now it includes a light version of dashboard, but it is pretty useless, let's be honest. At least the version
it needs
I
a lot
have.
of work.
Yeah. But like the concept of a separately installed dashboard is or can be quite foreign.
Yeah.
What do you think of Zen Orchestra as a tool, concept, whatever?
So, and this is what I tell people. People, when they tell me, I'm only going to run one host. it's hard for me to sell you on xcp-ng at that point, because if you're only going to run one single host, you never plan to expand, you're trying to minimize things, Proxmox might even make more sense for you because it's just built-in dashboard, etc. It just works. It's the scalability that you get from having the dashboard be separate. That's when it really shines. And because we're doing a lot of enterprise work and we work with large companies that are, like I said, sometimes running 2,000 virtual machines, we're obviously running quite a few hosts on there. Matter of fact, one of the projects we've been working on is two data centers, one interface that splits between two data centers with failover between them, all running xcp-ng. That's the scale the company's operating at, and that's what makes it important, is the fact that it can actually scale that well. So I don't think it's a bad thing, but it kind of depends on perspective, because it is just daunting if you're a home user and you're looking for the simplest. This is obviously when you have a smaller barrier of entry, and the home lab is frequently built on what was the easiest thing for me to get set up, not what was the best for where I'm going, because when you start with a home lab, you don't even always know where you're going. You're like, I plugged it in and it worked. What's Linux? Let me load Linux. What's a hypervisor? Let's load something that'll load on this one single box I have. Often it's people's old gaming system we're going to dedicate to doing it.
That's exactly what I do.
Yeah, exactly, which is fine, which leads to a lot more Proxmox in the market, and people will assume that Proxmox is the dominant player in the market. And one of the challenges with the open source world is not having licenses. It sounds great, and everyone like, oh no, we can't have telemetry, and I get it, I completely get it that these large companies have abused any privileges. But to this day, I always make sure I turn on the popular package thing inside of Debian. I want the developers to know what I'm using. I would like to give them some feedback, because I've talked to developers, I've talked to people, and they're just like, only thing we can do is estimate downloads of our ISO. There we go. That's about how many installs we think we have, because there's no license, there's no phone home. We don't know how many people have installed this. There's no perspective.
If you think that's bad for the distros, just look at the kernel where every now and then you see a driver maintainer go like, does anybody even use this driver anymore? Let me know, because I kind of just want to drop it.
Yeah, you don't know. Yeah, you won't. The best way to find out is to take it out of the kernel and see who screams.
Right?
Yeah. Well, like when you think about like this kind of stuff, like Ubuntu trying to remove 32-bit libraries, and then everybody just jumps in the air. And at the end, you realize it's just one group of people. All that can be a hard measure without actual scientifically provable data like telemetry can give.
Yeah, so there is some value in telemetry. Obviously, there's times where telemetry just goes simply too far. But if we're just tracking just like how popular something is, I don't see anything wrong with that. So that's where I run into like arguments with people all the time, where they tell me that, telemetry bad. Don't even give me a prompt option for it. I'm like, okay, so what if you get the telemetry prompt that pops up and just says, would you like to enable telemetry, and it defaults to no? Is that acceptable? No, because that's telemetry. Okay, but would you use it anyway? He's like, yeah, probably. I would just hit no on that. Now, obviously, I come from the background of defaults matter. Is it better for that telemetry prompt to start at no or yes?
Ooh, I mean, the reality is tyranny of the default. People leave things at default. So there was a lot of people that give crap to Unify for leaving it on by default. The fact that Unify even gives you an option to turn it off, which is unlike other network vendors, impresses me. I mean, I've had people, they really should set it off to default. In real, Unify has the same problem. They at least know what products they've sold, but without any type of feedback, they may not know the type of configurations, what's the things people are doing. And they do a good job of being clear about what they're doing with it. And I get why people can complain, because you give them an inch, they take a mile, which is the unfortunate nature of many of these companies. So I think I like when companies are trying to be transparent, but it is always hard to earn trust, because especially when you don't really know the company very well. Even if you do, like, do you really know about them enough to say that they're a good steward of this? Will they actually only take the data they're saying? I completely understand the hesitation. It's not an easy problem to solve. I talk about Quad 9, for example. The number of people, and I made sure it was clear in the video, like, they do not have a way to set up an account. They have no way to track you. But Tom, how do I know they're not tracking me? I'm like, They don't have a way. You literally can't create an account. There's not an option for this. I don't know how you would. Do you email them the websites you go to? I mean, they're just doing DNS queries.
I mean,
And now that we're with tracking, I have a question for you. And since you also do a bit of security things
Yes.
on your videos, what do you think of public VPNs? The things like PIA, NordVPN, and things like that. What is your opinion of them?
I have very little faith in any of them, but generally speaking, they probably, probably the biggest reason people use them is to get around region block, and they don't have an interest in turning those people in simply because
they make
that's
money
their
off
business.
of them.
If they got a reputation for that, you wouldn't use them for region block anymore. So they're generally good for the things that people want to use them for. If you are someone, well, let's say, you want to turn government secrets in, or you really want that, I would never trust them to be that level of privacy that they couldn't get tapped by the government or something along those lines. Anytime you have, U.S. or state-sponsored agencies looking for you, I'm not going to say that the VPN providers, I would never put that as part of your OPSEC going, probably better than nothing is all I could say, but I don't know that I'd put my faith in their hands, especially with the recent incident that just happened with Proton and Frack Magazine. If you haven't followed that, it's been a really fun joyride of Proton basically destroying some accounts that they probably shouldn't have, and they're like, wait a minute here, this is a little, it's been kind of fun following all of that, but nonetheless, it doesn't give me the best. Once because there was some state agency stuff involved, once you get any state level agency involved, I would not say they're the best protection for anything like that.
I was more asking that in the context of security, since many of them build themselves as a security tool.
Right,
yeah,
right,
no,
right.
it's not a security tool. They are they should be referred to as a privacy VPN, and as always, the term I will use for them is privacy VPN, not security. Unfortunately, there's a lot of ad reads by random YouTubers, especially the non-technical ones, that certainly imply that these things will enhance your security, which is not true.
I have gotten in debates with some YouTubers where, it used to be that, like, when I would watch a YouTube video and VPN ad would show up, as soon as they say something that is blatantly wrong about the VPN, that's where I pause the video, go down and comment, and go like, stopped watching the video at this point here because you said this about VPNs, and that is plain wrong. That is not how they work. I'll see you another day. And I've gotten into, and I used to be very religious about that. And there was not one or two YouTubers who I've gotten into debates with and go like, that's just what they told me to read, bro. Like, yeah, they're lying. That's false advertising.
Well, and that's the important thing I was going to say here is that the big challenge is I can't remember which YouTuber it was. One of the ones that makes some, he's one of people like 10 or 15 million subscribers. Maybe it was Mark Rober, but like someone who does not. I mean, they do technical content. Yes, Mark Rober does science videos. He's a smart guy. I don't think he spends a lot of time thinking about his NordVPN ad.
No.
He reads what they told him to read. I feel like it might have been him. It could have been someone else of that type of YouTuber who does good content. But the problem and what people don't realize is how much these ads pay, and so they're just like, cool, you're going to give me $150,000 or $200,000 for a video for an ad read. So they read the ad. And it's like, cool, that's just part of the job to them. There's not a ton of thought deeply put into it. Not to mention if they were to go search, and this is what they do because this is how they send it over to us. By the way, Nord's reached out to me a few times, and so have many others, and I've always told them no. But what they'll do is they'll send me all the clips of all the ads and link them and say, here's the ad read done by, similar YouTubers. And then they're like, here's a check if you read this copy. And I say no, but obviously there's a lot of people that say yes because, and by the way, that's not an unrealistic thing to get $50,000 to $100,000, $150,000 for an ad read for a large YouTuber. People don't realize just how much these ads pay. I'm always transparent.
There's a reason why they take on sponsors.
Yeah.
Well, and you got to keep sponsors to keep things going. It's always funny when people say, Tom, you're biased. You're talking about this because they sent you one. I'm like, this thing's like $50. I said, the ad read at the beginning of this, someone paid me $6,000 for the ad read. I said, I'm not selling out because someone gave me a $50 item. Trust me. That is not my bias is, and I always try to make sure my vendors or whoever I use for ads are what I refer to as perpendicular to the content. So I had a video tutorial I did on Docker, and I did NetBird as a sponsor. So the NetBird sponsorship has nothing to do with Docker. So cool.
No, not
There's no
really.
conflict of interest.
Well, on the topic of VPNs, I wanna add that I personally, and listeners might actually know that just as much as Josh will, that I have in past in this on this podcast said that VPNs actually reduce security, not increase it, because at the end of the day, it is a VPN tunnel, which
Yeah.
means it's actually a virtual private network, an overlay network, which in theory anyone could join and then could produce certain man-in-the-middle style attacks, depending on how good of a security they actually use.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I wanted to hijack a bunch of people using crypto, for example, the best way to do it would be to start a really low-cost VPN company that claims I'm the best security for people using cryptocurrency, and then I hijack and man in the middle it because I can, monkey with the DNS or do something else because now you're piping through my network. So yeah, definitely, there is a potential, but then again, you have to just weigh it out, because would that VPN company monkey with your connection, or would your ISP monkey with your connection? You still going through one of the two of them. You can blind your ISP by going to, creating a tunnel between you and the VPN provider, blinds the ISP details of your connection. When ISPs generally don't monkey with things, they're interested in collecting data about
It all
you because they
depends
can
on
sell
who
it.
do you trust more.
Yeah.
Do you trust somebody who you can sue because they are likely in the same country
Yep.
as you, or somebody who's probably across the world from you in some country you couldn't even touch?
Yeah.
Now, who do you trust more?
Yeah, and PIA,
That's
if
my
you look up,
question.
I think they're still called Cape Technologies. You got to dig around to Wikipedia for this. PIA and a bunch of others, a company called, I believe it's called Cape, they bought a bunch of all the VPNs. So even though they keep them as separate companies, they're not. And they're all registered like in the Cayman Islands or Virgin Islands.
Yeah.
They're registered somewhere special. Like you said, not in a country where you have access to going after them. And
Yeah, good luck trying to litigate with your VPN provider. So
yeah, not likely.
just remember that if you want a secure VPN, just host it yourself. Use like a Linode instance or a Hetzner instance or something like that if you have to. But even then, you're still putting your faith in somebody else's computer.
Yeah.
So,
And obviously one of the big concerns there, especially I kind of mentioned like region blocking. We won't go into details on here,
Yeah.
make the YouTube algorithm mad at me for going into it, but most people know when they say region blocking, like, oh yeah, that's what I use it for. If the people you're getting around region block decide to subpoena Linode's going to go, well, this is whose credit card's on file.
That's true.
The VPN companies, it's a little harder, and because so many people are doing it, you're blending in with the noise. 'Cause
Yeah, and
that's-
more
yeah.
importantly, these days, companies that do region blocking actually ban IPs that are owned by, let's say, cloud providers. They're
Yeah.
owned by data centers. So a data center based IPs might not even be that useful to you.
yeah, like Plex, I know for example, has every single IP address for Hetzner blocked.
Who doesn't?
Yeah.
Let's be honest,
Kind of
who
at this point,
doesn't?
Hetzner has a reputation for facilitating that kind of customer. So obviously, it's going to come around. That's the cost of being probably one of the cheapest options available.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of issues when you get IPs, especially because they get stolen credit cards are used a lot in the threat actor business, and what they'll do is they'll go ahead and register with Linode because it's trusted and it's
Yep.
a relatively reputational provider, and it's US based, and they'll use those as attack servers. So you'll find Linode servers sometimes as the attack, and you're like, the investigations usually find the dead end of, oh, they stole a credit card and bought, they bought a Linode and spun it up because they knew it wouldn't flag on security as being from Hensner or
Yeah.
some other foreign entity. So I've spun up some that had, I couldn't get something working when I was testing, and I was like, wonder why. But I'm gray listed and blacklisted. I looked up the IP and it was listed in a bunch of previous things. So once they shut it down, the IP goes back in the pool. I fired up a year. It had been dormant a year, but even a year was enough to get it off some of the block lists.
Yeah, I ran
In past, I believe it was with Hetzner. was using it for something, I couldn't even access AWS API on IPv4 because AWS blocked that specific IP. I managed to make it work by completely disabling IPv4 and just running IPv6 because IPv6 is generally, well, nobody blocks that because
Right.
who uses that?
Yep.
My only complaint about IPv6 is that Roku doesn't support it, so my ISP still has to pay for IPv4 addresses.
We were doing some pen testing. There's a tool called Trevor Spray. It's really slick. It'll allow you to rotate through IP addresses when you're doing Microsoft credential stuffing. And the fun part about that is obviously IPv4 addresses are a premium. It lets you rotate through IPv6 addresses. Turns out, because it's all rate limited per IP, you can get a big block of IPs. Everyone's like, sure, here's a lot of IPv6. And then you can tie that into the program.
64.
Yeah, and then you tie
Nobody
it into the program.
cares.
Yeah.
My ISP just gave me Slide 64 for my network. Here you go. I'm like, okay,
It gets around Microsoft rate limits.
Yep.
great.
They don't
Good to
have any
know.
filtering for it. At least they didn't when we tested. That was last year, so I'm assuming I'm willing to bet that same trick works.
Yeah, it might. I mean, I'll have to test it one of these days. You know, just see what happens. That said, in order to be able to do that on Windows, I need to be able to first find the ability to download Windows because for some reason I just can't download it. So I guess I had to sucker up and pay $100 for the official USB key that they still sell for some reason. I think they even sell Windows installable from Blu-rays. If you look hard enough, you probably can find it.
Probably.
But I think it's just a net installer, if anything. This is going to be a bit of a shorter episode simply because we are short on time. So I think that's probably about a good spot there where we can look towards stopping the show. Now, obviously, our production is not just found on YouTube. We run our podcast the hard way, right? Well, we pay a VPS provider, so we're not doing that hard of a way. We pay a VPS provider to
Not yet.
Not yet. But we pay a VPS provider to host our podcast for us because Bigpod and I, we're technically smart enough to be able to figure out how to do that. But obviously, it's not the cheapest way to be able to run a podcast these days. So, if you, the listener or the viewer, would like to support us, you can go to patreon.com/notuxallowed. Drop us a couple dollars right there. We'll give you access to a premium feed that comes with a higher bitrate audio, plus occasionally some extra content in there. When we actually post extra content in their Bigpod.
Yes.
But
Gosh, we need to record some.
Yeah. We probably should record some at some point.
Probably next business meeting.
Of course. But anyways, we also have our own YouTube channels. I'm youtube.com/@10leej. Bigpod, you're at I believe it's at Bigpod, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And where they can find you, Tom?
LawrenceSystems.com. That's where you'll find links to all my socials, where you can get a hold of me, and links to my YouTube channel and everything else.
And of course, if you want to give us a contact and tell us how amazing Tom has been for a guest, you can just send us an email to contact@tuxspace.com. Because I still receive emails to that address. It supposedly still works. But anyways, guys, I think that's going to be it for the show. So we're going to go and wrap this up, Tom. Hopefully we can chat with you again sometime. I rather enjoyed it. So
I always have fun nerding out and talking tech. It's just a matter of finding all the time. With winter coming, I'll have a little bit more time. I've been doing projects in the yard, and between that and balancing, getting all the other things I need to get done. But once winter hits in Michigan here, where I'm at, it's cold and I don't go outside a lot. So
I mean, I'm in Ohio. We get snow sometimes. It typically doesn't last about 7 hours anymore. But occasionally we get this big chill that, gives us snow for about 2 weeks, and then it's just how long does it take for me to be inspired to make a snowman?
Yep. And then I'm like back inside. I'm done with the snow.
Yep. All right. Well, anyways, guys, we're out of here. We'll see you next
care.
week.
Goodbye.